from Holland, a Dutch scholar, who produced the very first printed edition of the Greek New Testament. Now, the New Testament itself was written in Greek. In the centuries afterwards, it got translated into Latin, and the church tended to use the Latin translation. So Erasmus produced a text in the original Greek, which he hoped would be a critical scholarly edition, and this is called the first published edition. Now, for the most part, Bart Ehrman says, he relied on a handful of late medieval manuscripts. In fact, on just one 12th century manuscript of the Gospels, and another also from the 12th century for the book of Acts and the Epistles. And as we shall see, he says, it's this edition that he had produced of the Greek New Testament that was used by the later translators of the King James Bible a century later, and virtually all translations until the end of the 19th century. And he tells a very interesting story then about this Trinity verse. And he says, indeed, as it turns out, these manuscripts that Erasmus used were not of the best quality. They were, after all, produced some 1100 years after the originals. For example, the main manuscript that Erasmus used for the Gospels contained both the story of the woman taken in adultery in John's Gospel and the last verses in Mark's Gospel, which tell the story of the resurrection in the earliest Gospel, passages that did not originally form part of the Gospels, but not in the vast majority of Greek manuscripts. A passage that has long been a favourite among Christian theologians, of course, since it's the only passage in the entire Bible that explicitly delineates the doctrine of the Trinity, and that there are three persons in the Godhead, but that these three all constitute just one God. So in the Vulgate, which is found in our King James Version, I just want to read a passage. So this is the King James Version, the Holy Bible. It says, "For there are three that bear witness in heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Spirit, and these three are one. And these are three that bear witness on earth, the Spirit, the water, and the blood. And these three agree as one." So this on the triune God who is one. Without this verse, the doctrine of the Trinity must be inferred from a range of passages combined together to show that Christ is God, as is the Spirit and the Father, and that there is nonetheless only one God. But Erasmus did not find it in his Greek manuscripts. Now this is the point. He used the best manuscripts that he had around in his city, which were actually not very good manuscripts by our standards today. The Greek manuscripts that he read simply said, "There are three that bear witness, the Spirit, the water, and the blood, and these three are one." So where did the Father, the Word, and the Spirit go? They were not in Erasmus's primary manuscript or in any of the others that he consulted, and so naturally he left them out of his first edition of the Greek text, as a good scholar would do, because there's no evidence that this verse is in the Greek manuscripts. More than anything else, it was this leaving out of this verse that outraged Christian theologians of his day, who accused Erasmus of tampering with the text in an attempt to eliminate the doctrine of the Trinity and to devalue its corollary, the doctrine of the full divinity of Christ. As the story goes, Erasmus, possibly in an unguarded moment, agreed that he would insert the verse in a future edition of his Greek New Testament on one condition: that his opponents produce a Greek manuscript in which the verse could be found. Medieval manuscripts that had it. And so a Greek manuscript was produced. In fact, it was produced for the occasion. It appears that someone copied out the Greek text of the epistles, and when he came to the passage in question, he translated the Latin text into Greek, giving the Johannine comma in its familiar, theologically useful form. The manuscript provided to Erasmus, in other words, was a 16th century production made to order. In Erasmus's day, wrote it out, included the verse, the Johannine comma about the Trinity, stuck it in and gave it to him. So, oh, well, there's your Greek manuscript. Go ahead and produce your good critical scholarly text, in which we have given nothing changed or corrupted. The phrasing of this line, especially the words text that is received by all, provides us with the common phrase textus receptus, or abbreviated as TR. And this is what it's known as today, the Textus Receptus. Manuscripts now that go back even to the 4th century AD, the Codex Sinaiticus famously, which of course does not have the Johannine comma, it doesn't have the story of the woman caught in adultery, it doesn't have the resurrection appearances, and there's a whole bunch of other things which I won't go into as well. So this is the story of how the famous Trinity verse, which openly, explicitly states that God is 3 persons in one, is in fact a verse, a fake verse, added in later by scribes. It was probably a marginal note or an annotation at the bottom, and it got incorporated into the text. That's one theory anyway. Not part of the original Greek manuscript, and this is very difficult for Christians to accept.
Praises and honor to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Recha HaKwadash, and double honors to the elder apostles and the elder bishops of Great Millstone. Honors as well to you brethren, you fellow believers of this truth, and shalom to the elect. So anyway, I'm going to share my screen on this one. Actually, I saw Elder Apostle Tahar video a little while back on 1 John 5 and 7. So I saw this video pop up, so it was through the Spirit, and I kind of listened to this man speak on the history of the Latin and the Greek, which I knew. I did videos on that, right? And it's crazy how during the Reformationists that these, I think they were German or monks or something, so they all knew Latin, but they had a time with translating the Greek, and then you had the Greek Masoretic texts, and they was just translating them, and they did it in the manner of the people. This is the same thing with Martin Luther. Martin Luther was also a monk of the Roman Catholic Church. I believe that's what they called him, of the Roman Catholic Church. And he had the same thing happened with this guy, Erasmus, right? The people wanted a form of different translation, because the way that the Latin was, and I mean the Greek, and they did all these translations and they screwed up the translations. So it's various things that they screwed up on translations, and that's what happens when you get translation, because it was all Latin. So they did all these translations and they kind of screwed up the translations, and they started adding things, and some of it they didn't understand. And that guy Martin Luther, he during the 1500s, he really tried to translate the Apocrypha, and for what I was reading, the story on it, he tried to translate it, but he had trouble, right? So it was all about the people. So he would go around the people, certain men who knew the Latin, and he would try to take their text and translate it, and he just had trouble. So he said, "To hell with the Apocrypha, it doesn't exist." So then later on, they put the Apocrypha back because they feel it wasn't canonized. Now there's history on Marcinius Canon and all those guys, but it wasn't canonized. So they figured it wasn't authoritative. So it was originally there. So why would they figure that? Because they had troubles with the translations. That's why it's now for the prophets today to understand the translation. So anyway, 2 Timothy 2 and 15, it says, "Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly divided by the word of truth." And that's what these scholars were doing. These scholars were trying to be like the prophets, and they're not prophets. Even the scholars today who are trying to be prophets and are not prophets, right? So like when you read Deuteronomy 28 and 68, and they'll say, "Oh, that goes back to General Titus and Vespasian in the time of the 70 AD, Because they had what were they going to say? Were they going to say, "Hey, this sounds like those people brought over on the waters," right? Because as I said before, if you were being transported to a prison, there's no reason, if you had somebody who writing it down, everything that's happening, there's really no reason to mention the fact that you in a truck or van being carried to prison. But if I'm getting beaten and tortured and destroyed on there, well, yeah. When you look at that transatlantic slave trade, and that came all the way from where it went to all the way across the waters, and the suffering and the tragedy, the worst atrocity ever created on the earth outside of them doing what they did to the Messiah. Yeah, why wouldn't that be biblical? A hurricane is biblical. But anyway, let's go to Matthew 24:36. But just to go into the Trinity a little bit. But of that day and hour, no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. So this would make the Lord like he has a disassociative issue, or let me say an identity issue. He doesn't know who he is. 1 minute he's separate, 1 minute he's together. So let's read 1 John. Well, do I have it up? Yeah, 1 John 5 and 7. Do you know? Let me read it. For there are three that bear record in heaven: the Father, the Word, and the Holy Ghost. Right? And these three are one. Right? Now you can look at this word and they'll say it's Father to Jesus and the Holy Ghost. But when you look at all the other translations, it says they had issues with this translation. For there are three that testify. See, when you look at vocab and those guys who are Protestants, Reformationists, they could give a damn about true history, right? And they might act like they're sincere on it, but they really don't look at the big picture, especially when it comes to us, as I brought out with slavery and the yoke of honor, the necks and things like that. But the other people they can claim is the people of God, and they set up all kinds of situations I can't say in this video. But anyway, when you look at all the translations, we're going to go into the Weymouth translation. It says, for there are three that give a testimony. It's the Spirit, the water, and the blood. And I believe that's what this man said in this video. So further context, I looked at one of the elder Apostle Ramlav's video when he went and copied, I don't remember what that is, abhor the Edomite, and he was going into the Syrians and how you copied the Greek manuscripts and then copied and translated to English, and then what it said. I can't remember everything, but he was going into Deuteronomy 7. I believe it was 7 when it was saying not a Edomite, but it's actually a Syrian, because the Syrians was going into it was related to the Abraham, and they was calling themselves Syrians. But that's another video. We're going to go here, 1 John 5 and 7, the English majority text. It says here, for there be three that bear witness, the Spirit, the water, and the blood, and these three agree as one. So this is totally different than what you've seen in the other texts, right? This is totally different. Let me go back here, right? Let me go on down here in the other. Let me see what it says. 1 John 5 and 7, it says, for there be three that testify in the Spirit, the water, and blood. Oh, this is in the NIV. Yeah, the Spirit, water, and the blood. These three are in agreement. Yeah, that's in the NIV, right? Let's see what the Christian Standard Bible say. One of the great Christians like that Bible. It probably will say what they want to say. But there be three that testify, the Spirit, the water, and the blood, right? That's what it says in the Christian Standard Bible. I just decided to go further into that. So I won't make this long. I'm just reading a couple of them. This is the Byzantine majority text. This is, as you see, this is in all Greek. So I take the pleasure to copy this, right? And then I hit on over to the and enter it. You know, you can do the Greek English translate, and it says the spirit and the water and the blood, and all three are in. It says is in. This is Old English, right? So when you go to this thing called Johannine comma, is this is in relationship of literature, especially ancient manuscripts, is an entry or passage in a text that was not written by the original author. Okay, I just want to stop there, and then want to read this, some little commentary, right? Critical. It's called Critical Apparatus in the Greek, but then they did some translations. It says the publication of Erasmus' first edition excited great attention among scholars and theologians. There were many who hailed its appearance, while others condemned it on every possible ground. If he had been content, right, with publishing the Greek text, or if he had only subjoined the. Okay, it says, where we at? Latin Vulgate, and them in common use of all might have been well. But his own revised Latin version was regarded as such an innovation that every variation from what had been commonly read was regarded by presumption or even as heresy. In fact, the outcry, which was Jerome, going back to St. Jerome, the Vulgate, had once been assailed, was now renewed against Erasmus, right? The annotations also by which justified what were regarded as in motivation, novitations, were fresh cause of displeasure to many amongst the monkish theologians of the day. So I looked up Erasmus and his timeline. October 28th, 1486 to 1536, and this is all in the time. This is all Roman Catholic. He was a Catholic priest, a theologian. This all goes back. What it says here, a satirist. He was like one of those monks. He was just like what's his name, Martin Luther. So this is what was going on and why we got what we got. And the Lord allowed this, right, to bring more confusion to the children of Israel. Remember, it fits the curses. Deuteronomy 28:64 says, "And ye shall serve other gods from one end of the earth to the other, where neither thou nor thy fathers have known." So these are all serious curses put on the people. So that Trinity, when you really go back into it, it really goes back to Babylon and the Queen of Heaven. When you go to Semiramis, it's different variations. Tammuz and the sun and various things of that nature. The Greeks and, in other words, I believe Pope Pius had a hand in pushing that. I don't know how true that is. I'm just trying to go with the facts and what's being read here. How this is all really Roman Catholic based. That Reformation is all Roman Catholic based. That's why he always said, when you look at Salakia, when you look at the Trinity, that's all Roman Catholic. How the heck is the Father, the Son, they together as one? When the Lord said that I'm the Most High God, there's no other God that's beside me, meaning he was talking about the other gods of the children of Israel worshiping, but Yahushua sits beside him, but he's not on the level of the Father. That is crazy. That's insane to even think that. And that's why our people are all messed up worshiping other gods. There's a thing called order. And the Most High deals with order. So this is the reason why with this Trinity, you see our people, when you look at the father and the wife and the children, the son and the daughter, or if it's just the father or just the mother, they all equal. They all following Trinity. When you really look at it, the children telling the mother and the parents what to do and how to do it. They're best friends. They're going out partying together. You know, they dance together. Nothing wrong with going out with your children, but there's an order that's set up. But this order has been compromised. And a big part of that is this damn Trinity. Talking about God and the Most High and the Son. They are one. They are the same. And there's different variations of the Trinity, you know. Anyway, that's all I have on that. Shalom.